Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Strzok, you've worked as a criminal investigator for at least 20 years, isn't that right?
National security investigator, primarily CI work, which within the Bureau we differentiate criminal, which is...
But you're familiar with criminal investigation,
yes, sir.
Correct? And you understand that as you're aggregating evidence, you're looking for a couple areas. Number one, you're looking to see if there's an act, the actus reus of a crime, right?
Yes.
You're also looking for a culpable mental state of a crime, right?
Yes.
You have to demonstrate the culpable mental state if you're going to bring a case forward, right? Intentional, knowingly, reckless, etc., right?
Almost always, yes.
Yeah, unless there's some kind of strict liability, right? And you'd agree that short of some statement against interest, most of the time the culpable mental state of either intentional or knowingly, that's usually done through circumstantial evidence, correct?
I hesitate to generalize. I would
trust me.
I don't know that I could answer
trust
that
me. It
question,
is.
sir.
It is, because short of someone making a statement against interest, you've got to prove that they intended not only every element of the offense, right, or knowingly did that offense. That has to be proved, and oftentimes it's by circumstantial evidence. Which, by the way, there's a jury instruction typically that goes forward that says there's no qualitative difference between circumstantial evidence and direct evidence. You'd agree with that statement, right?
So I'm not an attorney. I would.
Well, you've been in the court many times, right?
Well,
you sure sound like an attorney sometimes,
very
right?
Educated recitations of legal terms that I don't have the education to be able to respond.
Okay, well, trust me on that. There's a jury instruction that says
if you're representing to me that's accurate, I will accept that.
Right, and then this morning. You said, and then this has been a theme, and I don't know how many umpteen times you said it, but I wrote down the one quote you gave to Chairman Goodlatte. You said, quote, "My text messages are not indicative of bias," close quote. Do you still hold to that position?
I do.
Okay. Now, as we go forward here, when the FBI is trying to put together circumstantial evidence of a culpable mental state, they're looking at things such as text messages. They're looking at things such as communications between people for whatever reason, right? You'd agree with that?
I would.
Yeah. And so that indicates someone's mental state that you're going to take before a jury where you're going to say, beyond a reasonable doubt, we can demonstrate either intentional or knowing by this series, this accumulation of circumstantial evidence, right?
Rephrase the question, please, sir. I'm not...
Okay, this is not hard. So when you're trying to prove a culpable mental state, most of it's coming from circumstantial evidence, very rarely, unless you've got a confession, right?
Yes.
And so you're taking accumulation of various pieces of evidence and you're saying, look, this adds up to intentional or knowingly, right?
Agreed.
So one of the things that's been made evident here is that your statements and your communications with Ms. Page, it wasn't a one-off. It wasn't two. It wasn't three. This is a whole series. It's a whole series that goes on not for a day or a week. This goes on for a long period of time. Is that not true?
It is true.
Yeah. And so when people begin to say, was there bias on the part of Peter Strzok, they're not saying, oh, gee, on this one, just on August 8th. They're going through a whole accumulation and aggregation of various statements that you made and that Ms. Page made as well. So that leads us to the IG statement. So when the Inspector General comes in and I ask him the question, I said, look, you've said regarding Mr. Strzok and Ms. Page, you didn't find documentary testimony evidence that they had improper considerations, including political bias, directly affecting. I said, that's directly affecting, because you said they weren't the sole decision makers. I said, did they indirectly affect it? He said, yeah. Why? Because he said, you were the lead investigator of the Hillary Clinton. You were the liaison, if you will. You were the flow of information from the investigative team that you've said there's lots of them, and I kind of actually sketched a kind of a Venn diagram of how this works, organizational chart as it works, as you were describing it earlier today. You were the gatekeeper of information. Lisa Page was providing counsel to Andrew McCabe. On the Russian investigation, you were the head guy. You're the head guy. Now we have accumulation of biased information that indicates some kind of mental state of bias. And at the other end of this, we've got it that you're the head guy on these. That's what the Inspector General said under oath in testimony not too many weeks ago.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, if I may respond, I think
There's no question before you.
I want to correct some inaccurate things you said.
I didn't say anything inaccurate.
Oh,
There's
you did.
nothing to
Let
correct.
the witness needs to be able to answer the
Hey, you're
question.
out of order.
The witness needs to be answering the question.
Mr. Chairman, when aspersions are cast on the witness,
no
you're to be able.
aspersions cast.
Oh, there were.
Well,
sir.
you should allow the witness to answer.
Yeah.
Everyone,
Why are you afraid to let the
everyone will
witness answer the
suspend.
question?
Everyone will suspend, and the time of the gentleman has expired, and the chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Grothman, for 5
Sir,
minutes.
may I respond to the gentleman who just
No,
spoke?
you may not. The gentleman from Wisconsin has the time.
Mr. Chairman, you have said throughout this hearing that at the conclusion of the questioning, the witness would be permitted to respond. Is that rule now changed?
No question directed to him.
That's not true, Mr. Chairman.
It's true.
Well, he has a response he'd like to give to the committee. You
And I'd like
said
to
throughout the
continue
day that was the procedure. Now you're changing it. We're just going to allow people to make claims.
The gentleman is completely out of order.
No, Mr. Chairman, you're out of order.
No, the time belongs to the gentleman from Wisconsin, and he may proceed.
Mr. Chairman, you indicated, you must remember that
The
you
gentleman
indicated
is
that the
not in
gentleman
order.
could answer
chair,
the question.
The chair has recognized the
I
gentleman
beg
from
of you
Wisconsin.
to allow the gentleman, at the end of this long hearing, to be able to explain conflicts in representation that have been made by various persons on the panel.
The gentleman from Wisconsin
Well,
may proceed.
it seems to me that on advice of counsel, a lot of the things we want to find out here today, we're not going to find out. But I'd like to focus a little bit on the milieu in which you operate in the FBI. When I look at this area around Washington, D.C., I look, and we had a candidate run for president who ran on the promise to drain the swamp. When I look at the election results in the areas in which you and other people who work for the government around here live, I see a monolithic, almost monolithic mindset that can be illustrated in the election results in the area. Things that, given the country as a whole, was almost half for the candidate who wanted to drain the swamp and half for the candidate who didn't. You look District of Columbia, 4% for Donald Trump, Prince George County, 8%, Arlington, Virginia, 17%, Alexandria, 18%. I mean, things that in Wisconsin, 72 counties, and normally we're about a 50-50 state. There's not one county in which you have that, everybody voting together. So I want to dig into a little bit about the milieu in which you hang around with. Now, at the time where Mr. McCabe, who I believe was Miss Page's boss, at the time his wife ran for Congress, or was Congress, or was it maybe a state elected position, you referred to people who lived in a county just beyond Washington, D.C., a little bit more normal, still a Democratic county. You referred to them as this county, Loudoun County, is being gentrified, but it's still largely ignorant hillbillies. Now, I don't mean to embarrass you in that, because it doesn't surprise me that people in this swamp would refer to people, once you get a couple hours away from Washington, as ignorant hillbillies. It wouldn't surprise me if somebody was inadvertently got a hold of emails and people were saying that in the newsroom at MSNBC. It wouldn't surprise me if they were saying it in the Department of Interior or the Department of Education. It disappoints me a little bit that they were saying it in the FBI. But I'm going to ask you, in the areas of which people you congregate in your business, how you obviously talked about politics. How many people do you run into, say, in the Washington office here, who are overtly supporting President Trump?
When you say in the office, sir, a couple of things, and you may not have been here this morning. I do not view the people of Loudoun County as ignorant hillbillies. I live in an adjacent county, and much like in Wisconsin, you might look at folks in Minnesota with a sense of rivalry.
I know people like you.
I regret that statement, and
I know you regret it. I know
it's
it's one of those things that you never thought would come out. But
when you say the office, sir, I don't understand what you mean by around the office.
People who you work with on a daily basis.
I don't tend to know who they support, sir.
Well, it's apparent in the emails that you exchanged with Ms. Page that not only with regard to her opinions, but with you could obviously, the McCabes were very political in nature. You must have some general opinions of the politics of the people you work around. You were not shy about sharing your political opinions.
Right. My sense is the FBI, including me, is a very conservative, typically, organization. They believe in law and order. They believe in a strong national defense.
I'm going to say, when it comes
traditionally, sir, that
to draining the swamp or otherwise,
in my experience. I'm sorry, sir?
In areas in which I've worked in the past, prior to getting involved in politics, I could almost always tell you or have an opinion where people come down to on these issues. You are not shy about talking about politics. I want to know, in the social circle that you hang around with, including at work, maybe you get at home, do you ever run into people who would have voted for President Trump, people who you know?
Yes.
Would you guess in the FBI, like I said, we rattled off the percentage of people voting for President Trump in the surrounding counties. Looks like overall maybe less than 1 in 6, just amazing. Could you comment again on your comment, largely ignorant hillbillies? And there are a lot of people who think like you in this swamp. Okay, it's not unusual, probably a lot of lobbyists probably feel that way, congressional staffers. Could you comment in general on the political viewpoint of the people who work in the Washington office with you?
The general perspective, as I just said, sir, the most FBI agents, in my experience, tend to be strongly conservative.
Not outside of Washington.
Strongly law in Washington, D.C. Strongly conservative, strongly law and order, strongly national defense. Up until the current date, very strongly Republican. I don't know. I couldn't tell you what people did or didn't vote for this election because we don't tend to talk about that.
Guess I'm out of time.